Have you ever watched a political story spiral so fast, so dramatically, that it feels less like news and more like a live-action thriller? Well, buckle up, because what's unfolding right now inside Donald Trump's new administration is the kind of scandal-fueling, career-ending political hurricane that no one, not even his closest allies, saw coming. And trust me, you're going to want to see where this one goes, because every twist is more unbelievable than the last. But before we dive into this chaos, let me ask you something. What happens when a political brand built entirely on calling out corruption suddenly becomes the face of the very cover-up it once condemned? And what happens to an administration already drowning in controversy when one of its most high-profile appointments becomes its biggest liability? Today, we are breaking down a storyline that, again, based solely on the reporting and quotes, paints a picture of explosive infighting, collapsing trust, and a potential political implosion surrounding the man serving as Trump's FBI director in this narrative, Kash Patel. Let's get into it. You've probably already seen the chatter online. According to the breaking reporting from MS Now, formerly MSNBC, Donald Trump is actively considering removing Kash Patel as director of the FBI. And if you're thinking, wait, wasn't this guy supposed to be one of Trump's most loyal soldiers? You're not wrong. That's exactly what makes this so shocking. Here's how the reporting describes the situation. Trump and his top aides have grown increasingly frustrated by the unflattering headlines Patel has recently generated, according to 3 people with knowledge of the situation, who requested anonymity to speak freely. Patel has come under scrutiny for his stewardship of bureau resources, including his girlfriend's security detail and use of a government jet, and for his squabbles with other Trump loyalists. Trump and White House aides have confided to allies that the president is eyeing removing Patel and is considering top FBI official Andrew Bailey as the bureau's new director. According to the 3 people. Let me ask you, does this sound like a guy who still has the full faith of the president? Because it sure doesn't sound like it. And it gets even more telling when the White House is asked directly about this reporting. Normally, in politics, if a story is false, the denial is immediate, absolute, and harsh. But this time, President Trump has assembled the most talented and impressive administration in history, and they are doing an excellent job carrying out the president's agenda. FBI Director Patel is a critical member of the president's team, and he is working tirelessly to restore integrity to the FBI. You probably noticed the same thing millions of others did. That is not a denial. Not even close. And when the denial is missing, it usually means the story is real, or at least real enough to be politically dangerous. But here's where this story becomes a Shakespearean tragedy for Kash Patel, because if he loses this job, it's not the government jet or taxpayer-funded travel that's the real problem. It's that he may not have anywhere left to go after this. Why? Because the one thing he built his entire identity around, the passion, the outrage, the personal brand, has now come full circle to swallow him whole. Remember, this was the persona Kash Patel crafted long before becoming the FBI director in this narrative. Long before he had this job, he was the guy saying things like,
it's the same thing with Epstein's list. It's like, what the hell are these Republicans doing? Oh,
I saw you
give out the list.
I saw you make news this morning about that. I gotta get to that.
Yeah.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
Who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book?
FBI.
But who? There's...
that's under direct control of the director of the FBI. And to me, that's a thing I think President Trump should run on. On day one, roll out the Black Book.
This was his shtick. His lane. His brand. And then, he becomes the very person who supposedly has direct power over those files. He becomes, in his own words, the guy whose lane this supposedly is. But 11 months into this administration, still no release of the Epstein files. Not from Trump. Not from the FBI. Not from anywhere inside the government. Instead, as the narrative puts it, Democrats and the Epstein estate release documents, not this administration. And that's where the hypocrisy starts eating itself alive. Because as pressure grew, here's how Kash responded when the spotlight turned back on him and his earlier claims.
Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. How does he know? Does he know that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files? Or does he have access to the Epstein files?
I don't know how he would, but I'm just staying out of the Trump Elon thing. That's way outside
What the fuck are they doing?
I know my lane, and that ain't it.
Again, suddenly, the files aren't his lane. Suddenly, the thing he insisted was the FBI director's responsibility is now, somehow, none of his business. And people noticed. Big time. Because this is what his former supporters, his own audience, are reportedly saying now.
Number one, the real problem they have is that anybody who even spent 5 seconds looking at the Jeffrey Epstein story knows that it stinks to high holy heaven. Like, there is something going on here. You just cannot explain all of these coincidences between his rise to prominence, his rise to wealth, his connections to all these people, getting a sweetheart deal, the cameras going out, having Ehud Barak sleeping at his place. Like, we're going to need some type of explanation here. And it can't just be, nothing happened. And then number two, even if you could sell everybody on nothing really happened here, there was no blackmail, there was no intelligence connection, it's just Jeffrey Epstein. Well, then, if that's the case, can someone explain to me how Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino don't all have to resign in disgrace? Because you stoked the flames of this thing for years. I mean, not only Kash and Dan enriched themselves by stoking the flames of this and promising to get to the bottom of it. Pam Bondi put on that ridiculous stunt where she brought all these right-wing influencers in and said it was volume 1, implying there was much more to come, and then had just tricked all of them and given them stuff that was already in the public record. So even if it's true that there's no there, which I am not buying at all, you're all still implicated for hyping up this thing that I guess you were doing on completely false pretenses.
And by the way, we don't know what version of these documents is going to come out. Because we have Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, and we have all of these people, this goon squad, who lie about everything. Now, we don't know. We can't trust any of them. They told us nothing was going on.
This is devastating. Because how do you go back to that same audience? The one you built by claiming you were the truth teller, the fighter, the guy who would expose everyone else's corruption, and expect them to trust you again. Which is why he might be clinging to his job with everything he has. But here's the wild part. This isn't really about Kash Patel. Not entirely. Because, again, this is described as a feature of the entire administration. Not a bug. A system where loyalty is currency and appearances are everything. A system where every individual is fighting to preserve personal power rather than public trust. And here's the kicker. While this internal chaos unfolds, the narrative claims that the promises Trump repeatedly made, cheaper goods, cheaper groceries, cheaper rent, cheaper housing, lower inflation, more jobs, have all moved in the opposite direction over the past 11 months. Food costs up. Rent up. Housing up. Inflation rising since March. Jobs disappearing. Manufacturing dropping. Jobs numbers withheld. Whether viewers agree or disagree, the tension this creates inside the story is enormous. Because while all this happens, the narrative paints images of Trump surrounded by gold, wealth, and opulence, untouched by the real-world consequences everyday Americans feel. And Kash Patel? He becomes a tiny, but symbolic, piece of that puzzle. A brand built on outrage, now collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching. If you made it this far, the only question left is, do you think this political storm is just beginning, or is it already too late for everyone involved? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you want more deep dive breakdowns of political power struggles, media narratives, and the explosive stories shaping this moment. And don't forget to subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching. Stay curious. Stay critical. And as always, stay tuned.